Hello. So I am here to talk about the top 10 signs that your job is toxic. And the reason why I'm having this conversation is that I've had conversations over the past year talking about Black women healing from toxic work environments. And some of the comments that I've received back are Black women asking, well, how can I tell if a job is really toxic? And I'm starting to second guess if this is really a toxic job. So I am here to talk about that so that we stop second guessing ourselves and gaslighting ourselves. So, again, we're going to be talking about the top 10 signs that your job is toxic. I've done a few videos, or I think a couple of videos already about this topic. But today it's going to be all 10. Hopefully, I can make it through all 10. I have a little cold, so hopefully, I can make it through all 10. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to review the top 10 signs that were identified by the performance room that I found on LinkedIn. So I'm going to go over the top 10 with commentary. Okay. So as you're listening to these top 10, just take note of which ones apply to you, right? And then at the end, I'll be talking a little bit more about if you want to apply to have a 15-minute free consultation call with me, how you will go about doing that. Okay. So again, my name is Dr. Kamani, licensed clinical psychologist. So welcome to my channel, Lifting As We Climb Consulting, Wellness Services. If you have not already subscribed to my channel, please do so right now. Take that time right now and subscribe. And also make sure you comment and share the video. I've asked before for Black women to really know what are the issues that you want me to talk about more, right? So I really want to be a support to other Black women and let other Black women know that you are not alone and going through a toxic work environment. I also want you to know that healing is possible. And I am a model of that, right? So that healing is possible and you can actually grow after these toxic work environments. So I'm going to go over the first two that I've already done in the short videos. So the first is, people are aware at the job that the job is toxic. So people are talking about this place, I hate this place, it's so negative. They're talking about all the negative things about the job, but nobody's doing anything about it. Okay, so that's sign number one. That's okay, that's a toxic job. Because many times when you're in a toxic job, it's not just the one boss or the two bosses or supervisors, it's generally the system, right? So the system is toxic. And so a system that's toxic really doesn't want to change. So what happens many times is that those who do bring up that the system is toxic, those people are kind of pushed out. Okay. So again, sign number one is if you recognize that people around you at the job are talking about the job as toxic, but nobody's doing anything about it. Okay. The second sign that your job may be toxic is you are going through issues. And when you try to report these issues, people say to you, well, how do you measure that? Or I don't know, how can you prove that that happened? Right. And so when I think about that, and for you to think about how do you measure psychological harm? Many times we are in workplaces where we are experiencing some type of psychological harm and there's not psychological safety. So how do you quantify that, right? So if you are in a work environment and you are doing your best, your absolute best, you're working really hard, but no matter what you're doing, you're being beat down, you're being micromanaged, you're experiencing microaggressions, you're being put in your place, you're being silenced, all these different things, that is an example of psychological harm. Okay, so that's number two. Number three is when you raise concerns about what's going on in your work environment, you may be told, oh, we need to escalate that to someone else, right? So the person that you're talking to is not helpful. And so you might go to other people and they may not be helpful, right? So you feel like you're like a dog chasing your tail. You go running around and around and around, and nothing is helpful. Okay, so that's the third sign. You try to get the help, and people are just saying escalate, escalate, escalate. And we're actually going to have a series coming up soon talking about HR and the role of HR in toxic work environments. So, we have these expectations sometimes of HR that they're there to support us and things like that. And, many times it's important for us to keep in mind that HR is there to protect the company. They're not there to protect you. And so just be mindful as you're going in terms of have a clear expectation of what it is that you want. As Anne Marie Archer, if you have not watched her videos, please watch them. She's known as the anti-HR lady, and she talks to Black women and helps Black women um, really identify what is it that you want when you talk to HR. And if you choose to leave the job, how you leave in an empowered way. So you're leaving with your coins, right? So you don't leave anything on the table. So again, if you have not followed her, I'll put her information in the description section as well. Okay, so be mindful of HR. I know I've gone to HR before, again, before all this happened. So now, as you come out the other end, what you may realize that once you've gone through a toxic job or toxic work experience, you have learned so much from that. Okay, so that's part of my mission is that I've gone through it, I've survived, I've thrived, right, as a result of it. But it was my own healing journey. And so my hope is to share this with other Black women so that hopefully the healing goes a little bit smoother, right? And, I don't want anyone to feel that they are alone or that they caused this or it caused them to second guess themselves. I don't want anyone to feel that way. Okay. So I know that I went to HR previously thinking, I was going to get support. And I, scheduled a meeting with one person and I show up to the meeting, and this person has invited two other people from HR without my permission, right? And so I'm walking in thinking I'm getting support, but it was actually an ambush, okay? So again, be mindful of that. Number four, the fourth sign is people at the job are fearful of the boss. So they may say all these things about the boss behind the person's back and this person's this, and this. And the boss shows up and everybody kind of cowers down. And there's reasons why that might happen. So it's not just that people are scared of this person for no reason. Generally, the boss operates in a way that is very reflective of someone who is very vindictive, right? So many times people don't want to speak up because they have seen what happens to people when they speak up, right? So they have seen the consequences, they've seen the collateral damage of those who have spoken up. And so they don't want to be the next one. Because think about many times we are at jobs, unfortunately, so we can pay our bills, so we can survive. So people are scared to say anything because they don't want anything negative to happen to them. Okay. So they're scared of the boss, many times reality based, because they have seen what happens to those who speak out. Right. So, in terms of having a vindictive boss. Okay. Number five, they only focus on the results. So it doesn't matter, how the employees are feeling. It doesn't matter in terms of if employees are being respected. There's no understanding that if employees feel appreciated and respected, they're generally going to do better work. So then that will lead to a better outcome. So that will lead to better productivity and you'll end up making more money, right? The company. But there's this disconnect, right? So sometimes bosses or a leadership system, a culture, sometimes acts in a way that is very dismissive of employees and sees employees just as kind of just worker bees, right? So when you do that, there's no real compassion for the employees. And so sometimes you might hear, oh, we do care about our employees, right? We have employee recognition, or we have these other things, but we have to look at what are the actions that are showing that they value their employees, okay? So are the actions consistent? So I'm thinking about James Baldwin when he talked about, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. So, if they're saying one thing, but you see that employees are not treated well, or you might see that certain employees are treated well and certain other employees are not treated well. So again, what type of culture is that environment creating? Again, is it creating a toxic work environment? Okay. So the next one is that sometimes you may have people in the workplace where they're not really thinking about the collective, like we're working together for a common goal, right? Or we're working together to help kids, right? You may have some people in the workplace who are only focused on um, promoting or getting their attention, that, they get all the attention and the shine, right? But they're not really focused on the true mission for what you might think that you're there for a particular reason, but they are acting in a way that's very self-serving. So again, be mindful of situations in which people at their job are really not invested in the true mission, right? They may be invested in their own personal gain or interests or promotions, right? Um, another sign is when you voice some type of confusion, or, like, oh, well, maybe let's look at another way of thinking about it, or I'm wondering about this. It's the perspective of, if it's not this way, then get out, right? So it's like there's only one way. There's no opportunity to even discuss, right? Not that we are discussing things in a disrespectful way, but there's no opportunity to even question. So again, that conveys a message that your voice does not matter, and that you are silenced, and you are just to just do as you're told. Right now, we know when we go to jobs, we do have job duties. I'm not talking about not doing our job duties. What I'm talking about is sometimes there may be feedback that you may have or a colleague may have that really might help in terms of the operations of the company, but people don't want to hear that. Okay, so you're kind of silenced in that moment. The other is, you may be in a work environment, and the work environment in terms of the culture of produce, 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 right? So it takes that human quality out of it, that you may find that you and or your colleagues are experiencing a lot of anxiety at work, always feeling like you're being watched, or nothing you're doing is good enough, or feeling that you're just exhausted, like you just can't give enough, right? So you work the hours you're supposed to work, you full in, right? But then the expectation is that you then take work home. Okay, so there's no work-life balance. So again, that is toxic as well. Okay, so we're getting down to number 9 in terms of the ninth sign. The ninth sign is, sometimes you might be in a situation where the work environment is very much influenced on fear. So if you don't produce this, then this consequence is going to happen to you, right? If you don't produce at this level, you're out, right? So there's no real understanding that, the company is there to help support you, right? You are there to provide a service, but it's kind of like a very like cut and dry. Like if you don't make the cut, you're gone. Okay. So that sense contributes to the sense of anxiety, like I talked about before, and also the exhaustion. So the last sign, number 10, that your job is toxic, and I'm going to talk a lot more about this because I am a psychologist. So I'm talking in terms of mental health aspect too, right? So the last sign that you know that your job is toxic is that your physical and your mental health is suffering. And I would say spiritual also, right? So let's say that you're having health issues, you're having stomach aches, headaches, difficulty sleeping. I remember for me, like my hair started falling out in certain sections, and I was getting like these profuse nosebleeds. I never had nosebleeds ever before in my life, right? So these health issues were starting to impact me. And my ask and my invitation to you is to really reflect on, if you are in a toxic work environment and you're questioning if you're in a toxic work environment, more than likely you are, right? So you know deep down that you are. But I'm just here to provide more information in terms of what are the actual signs that you can say, you could critically evaluate and say, you know what, I am going through some of these different things. These things are reflective at my job. And it may not be all 10 of them, it might be one, right? So it's not a way to say, well, you have to quantify if you're in a toxic job. What I'm saying to you is that many times we second guess ourselves, as I said before, and we say, is this job toxic? I don't know. I can't really figure out, right? So again, this is just a resource for you to listen to, share with your friends if they're in a toxic job too, so that you can say, you know what, this is in fact a toxic job. What is it that I need to do next? Okay. So the first part of what to do when you're in a toxic job is have an increased level of awareness about if you're actually in a toxic job, right? If you recognize that your physical mental health, spiritual health is being impacted. So I talked about before some of the physical health symptoms. Some of the mental health symptoms might be depression, anxiety, just out of fear, panicky. I've heard people have panic attacks at work or on their way to work. I've been having interviews with women over the past year, Black women, and they've talked about on their way to work, crying on their way to work. And so crying and having that sense of depression about I have to go back to this toxic job. And then once they leave the car, having to mask themselves. So having to mask that they're in distress. So imagine the impact that has on you to mask how you're feeling all day, right? So you're not in a good space, but you have to mask every day that things are okay. And unfortunately, many people go through this for years, okay? So I just want to tell you that this does take a toll, okay? So there has been research that has come out recently talking about that Black women are now dying at earlier ages and we're getting diseases at earlier ages. So my hope is for you that you recognize you're in a toxic job and know that no job is worth your health. No job is worth your mental, your physical, your spiritual health. And so if you are in a toxic job, my hope is that you are aware of that and then you start making some constructive steps in terms of what's next. Okay. So if you're wondering, like, well, I don't even know what's next. I know I'm in a toxic job. I'm ready to leave. I don't even know what's next. Okay. So I do have a program to help Black women who are in toxic jobs but want to leave. Okay. If you want to apply for a free 15-minute consultation, I will put the link in the YouTube description box. Okay. So you can click that link to access the application and see if we are a good match to work with one another. Okay. So again, I just want to come on briefly to go over the top 10 signs that your job may be toxic. My hope, again, is that you realize that no job is worth your sanity. No job is worth your well being. Okay. And that you do have options, even though it feels like you don't. You do have options, and that you do not, there's no place at a job where you are told that you are not worthy. Okay. That is not the place for you. Okay. So, again, please subscribe to my channel, Liftings with Clown Consulting Wellness Services. Please share this video with other Black women who may benefit. And if you are interested in applying for a free 15-minute consultation call with me, so we could talk about next steps if you are in a toxic job and you want to leave. Okay. So, again, thank you for tuning in. And I will be back to talk about the top 10 signs that the toxic job is making you sick. Okay. So I've mentioned before that I've had, challenges as a result of a toxic job, right? And I've known of many other Black women who have too. So I know of these Black women in my family, friends, clients, okay, even people at the former location where I used to work, I've heard of many Black women who, unfortunately have died prematurely, who've had strokes, heart attacks, different cancer, a lot of different issues. Okay. So, again, my hope for you is that you recognize that you deserve better. Okay. You deserve better. And if the job is not treating you with respect, you have options. Okay. So, again, thank you for tuning in and have a good rest of your day. Take care. Bye bye.